Welcome to the Women in Vinyl podcast with Jenn DiEugenio, founder of Women in Vinyl, and contributor Robyn Raymond. This podcast facilitates conversations with those working in the vinyl record industry to educate, demystify, and diversify the vinyl community.
Welcome back to the Women in Vinyl podcast and episode 57. As we roll into year 3, we're excited to introduce ourselves again and be even more connected to you. While vinyl podcasts are popping up everywhere these days, the Women in Vinyl podcast stands out by amplifying often overlooked voices and diving deep into the technical side of the industry to empower and educate from people actually working in the field. We celebrate the trailblazers, those pressing records, working at indie labels, curating collections, and cutting lacquers, and more. We share their challenges and successes and highlight passion that is shaping vinyl's future. Thank you for joining us on this next chapter and enjoy the episode. And we're back.
Hi. It's 2025. Here we are. Oh my God.
No, it's crazy. We took a little break. Just a short one.
Did we?
Yeah. Kind of. In our own way.
It's true. It's true. It definitely was a mental break. That's what it felt like.
Yeah. It's nice when everybody else is off too. So I can actually try to unplug a bit. But I thought we could reintroduce ourselves because now we're on video. We're on YouTube. So
here's our faces. There they are.
So now you can listen or watch.
Yeah, you could even draw mustaches on us on your little computer screen. That'd be pretty funny too.
So I'm Jenn.
And I'm Robyn. Hello. I mean, you've seen us on the Instagrams. You know us. Here we are. But now we're on YouTube, and yeah, there's no hiding now, Captain.
So for people who don't know what you do day to day, what do you do?
I mean, I don't even really know what I do day to day. It's getting pretty wild. Well, I am a Women in Vinyl board member since 2019. Which is, I feel like a day-to-day kind of thing because it's always present in our minds. I am also a lathe cut record maker, which I try to do as much as possible still, but as we'll get into with the economy and things like that, that has changed a little bit. And I am a production manager / tour manager / I don't know. I don't think I'm an EP. Maybe I'm a technical director. Right now, I'm working with the Minecraft experience, the immersive Minecraft experience. That's currently stationed in Plano, Texas, and we'll be moving that very soon. And so that has kind of taken on a big part of my life.
Exciting.
It's very exciting. And I mean, that's like the beauty part of the music business is that you can do all kinds of things. Also, because you could never say no to anything because you never know when the work is going to stop. LOL. And we make this
later.
What's that?
Which we'll also talk about later.
Absolutely. And then we do this amazing podcast where we bring straight truth balls to your eyeballs and earballs now.
Yes.
And you? What about you? What do you do? Because you've got a new title to talk about. Ooh.
I'm the vice president of Gold Rush Vinyl. So that is one of the handful of women-owned pressing plants, and I'm down in Austin, Texas. Never thought I would live in Texas, but here we are. And yeah, my day-to-day is a lot of production schedules, tracking parts, hounding people for things, and making sure we're pressing records. So been doing this since 2018. I was at Furnace Record Pressing beforehand, where I cut my teeth from learning from the amazing Eric Astor. So yeah, here we are. So we put out a call for questions since some people already know us, but we hope to hear from other people now that we're on YouTube as well. But How did you get started in the vinyl world? What made you think like this is what I want to dive into?
Well, I always kind of had a really great record collection, and I was steeped in it with my granddad. That was kind of his thing too, being a radio guy for the Air Force, for the Canadian Air Force. So he used to play records on the radio. And that was his whole deal, and that was our kind of bonding thing. And my mom really took that as part of her identity as well. So records were always like not far from me. And I worked in the music business on the live side from 2004 till about 2011. And I walked away from that and went back to working in manual therapy. And I worked for the Canadian bobsled, skeleton, and hockey teams as one of their manual therapists. And I did that till 2017. And I mean, let's not say that athletes are like abusive. Let's not say that. But it was maybe not the best place for me at the end of 2017, at the end of my career there. And it just kind of all had a confluence where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I've just found solace in my record collection. And I was like, maybe there's something I can do with records. And at the same time, the only pressing plant in Canada was located in Calgary. And I was like, oh, well, I know those guys. I could probably help them out. But by the time I got back from being on tour with bobsled, they had closed. And I was like, what? Like, records are the biggest thing in the whole world right now, because we were 2017 at that point. So we had had like 10 record store days
Hmm.
by that point. So I was like, I mean, with all the love in my heart, but like, how did you fuck this up? Because like, what? And I didn't know like what I know now. Obviously, my I
You mean
give them
records
all.
aren't just coming back now?
Yeah, what? And they're starting to like have a resurgence, right? Yes, yes, honey, they are. Um, but like knowing what I know now, I feel like I have nothing but sympathy and empathy for those humans and what they were trying to do and the challenges that they experienced because of the like voracious appetite that they were trying to keep up with. And really like having no mechanical support, which as we've talked about a few times, like you really need that part because you don't just press the button
Ooh.
and a record comes out.
Oh no.
No. So, um, through finding out that they closed, I started kind of like working along with this label called Inner Ocean Records here in Calgary. And Corey Giordano, the guy that runs the label, he was like, "Oh, like you really love records and stuff, and we do a lot of records. Like we're looking at this like little machine." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And I was kind of like, I don't know that I would want to be a pressing plant person, but like cutting records one by one in real time obsessively sounds like something that totally would float my boat. So I went all in on that. Um, went to the Making Vinyl conference in 2017. Yeah, in October and November. It was the very first one in Detroit, Michigan, and met the lovely and talented Mike Dixon. And he was like overwhelmed by my enthusiasm, as most people are. Uh, But I was like, hey, should I do this? And he's like, yeah, fucking totally. I was like, all right, cool. And came home, got a line of credit, in which like the actual bank guy was like sliding the paperwork across to me. And he was like, I should not give you this money. And I was like, no, you shouldn't. But now I've signed it, LOL. And ran out of the door with my money and all the way to Germany to get my little record machine. And I kind of struggled with it for about a year. Went back to the Making Vinyl conference in 2018, where my friend Jessa had encouraged me to come back because she was like, "Oh, are you coming to the conference?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not really making any records. I'm kind of a fakey fickerson." So she was like, "Yeah, but everybody that you need to know that might be able to help you will be there. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. So I went and I met Noah Mintz and Kevin Park from Lacquer Channel Mastering and you, which seems just like literally a million years ago at this point.
No, it's crazy.
But yeah, I met you there too. And I mean, so many friends that I've had now for the last 7 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a great one. That was a really
It
good conference.
it was. It
Mhm.
really, really was. Yeah, it's crazy that you were there because it was
Hate
you're
that.
just we were just kind of just like Instagram buds at that point.
Mhm.
Like WIB was just like kind of a little spark in your eyeball at that
Well,
point.
it was our very first presentation. Me,
Yeah.
Jet got up and talked about women in final, and it was
Yeah.
two of us, and yeah, they were like, "Oh, you named it after the panel that we had at the Detroit one," and I was like, "No."
Of course they said that. And we'll elaborate on that more too.
Uh,
Ah! Um, but yeah, 2018 was kind of a banner year. I met all of those humans and you and got a job offer to move across the country to Toronto, work at Lacquer Channel Mastering, doing short run and apprenticing under the mighty Kevin Park with the Neumann. And yeah, pulled up stakes, packed everything into a little box and moved all the way to Toronto in 2019 and worked there through 2019 with like another job, which was tough. Got a job at Precision Pressing in 2020, right before the pandemic. Resigned there because I was getting way too busy with records at Lacquer Channel. And yeah, just like went all in on making records for 2020. And yeah, I think I made like 6,000 records that year or something,
wow.
which was
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah. And then yeah, worked in Toronto 2020, 2021, 2022, moved back here and haven't really stopped. I mean, everybody in Toronto is like, what are you going to do for a job? I was like, well, I don't know, probably the same thing. We'll see, I guess. But yeah, that's kind of my story, I guess.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, I also had kind of a roundabout way because I
Mhm.
was designing kids' clothes for Target and Oshkosh and people that don't know, that's what I went to school for. So I went to school for textile design and did that until I could not.
That's why our merch always looks so sick. Bro. So,
Yeah, it's my time to do something that I could never have done before because I designed for the new mom who only wants bunnies and bears for some reason. And so I could not draw another bunny, could not reinvent it another year. And so I I left that and became a career advisor, which was one of the best jobs I've ever had, helping
mm,
people in industrial design and textile design find jobs. And that was at the college I went to. And then Savannah was just too small of a town, and Ray and I wanted to find something else. And we moved to Nashville for a second, where he worked at United Record Pressing.
mhm.
And there wasn't really opportunities for me there, and I wanted to get into it. And so my mom was like, there's a record pressing plant opening at home. Come home. And so we moved back to Virginia and started working at Furnace as they were building the pressing plant there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was a real learning experience because it was like literally just machines that they scrounged from Mexico and got refurbed, and we were trying to figure out how to do it, how to plumb them in, what it took. What it ended up taking was replacing them with Phoenix Alphas, new ones.
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, lots of trial and error. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, and it was just a perfect kind of amalgamation of all the things I did because I can combine my design with, you know, definitely advising people. Labels and artists need a lot of advising and yeah, make some records. I've always been a collector like you. It was in my family and so Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but you say collector, but I mean, you are prolific, though, my friend. I mean, I think that I've done a pretty good job, but then I'm just like, man, no, 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 no.
Yeah, it's between Ray and I, it's getting a little crazy. So I have records all over the floor in here. I need to get organized, but
It
the
never, I mean, that part never stops. And that's coming from somebody that just like never organizes them, also. So there's
yeah, definitely different organizational methods if you're new here.
that. Yes, I embrace and celebrate chaos. I did, however, get some 45 boxes to put my 45s in. So
Amazing.
I do have that now.
What about with Russell? Is he into records and like organizing them, or is he in the same kind of
Oh
chaos?
no, he's obsessive. Yeah, no, his are like put into genre and alphabetized nicely. And he just kind of looks at mine and is just like, what are you even doing? And I'm like, you have two shelves. You stop. You stop right now. You can take that judgment and just stop it. But yeah, I mean, he's a DJ too. So
Yeah.
he has an appreciation for the medium, but yeah, he's still working on his collection, but he's much more organized than I am.
Yeah.
I appreciate him, but he also like wants to do a thing where we go on stream and like it's a title of like a thing that he wants to do every week, whereas like my girlfriend doesn't organize her records, like help us play one, and then we'll put on a spinner thing and like pick from this cube and like six from the left and we'll see what we get, because I mean that's kind of the way that I listen to them anyway, so why not?
Well, we have a question from our friend Gary at Marshall, who's at Gluehoo on Instagram, and he wants to know, what grail do we still hunt for?
I mean, I don't know that I have one, to be honest.
Yeah.
I had one that I was on the lookout for a really long time. But it wasn't that elusive. It was just kind of expensive, and I just waited on it for a long enough time that I either made more money or just it came down at the same time, and I was like, "Hooray, it's mine." So, I finally got it. Yeah, I don't know.
I know it's a hard
Um,
question for me now too. Like the one behind
yeah.
me actually was my big grail, the Black
Mhm.
Sabbath Japanese with the obi, because
Yeah.
people were selling it for over $1,000 everywhere. And I was like, it's literally a piece of paper. Like I understand it's survived since the 70s, but like let's be real.
Yeah.
And finally I found it from a man in Japan who was as thrilled to sell it to me as I was to buy it.
Oh, I love that. See,
And
that's what this collectorship is all about.
yeah.
That's the thing. I think if there's one that I want, it's just like it's it's silly, but it's because it's like a history of mastering kind of situation where I would really like to get the hot cut of Zeppelin 2 that Bob did that made the the daughter's record player skip. And so they repressed all of Zeppelin 2 because it was too hot. I'm like, oh, I just want to hear what it sounds like and like look at the grooves under the microscope. But again, yeah, it's like between 300, 700, 1,000,
Yeah.
2,700. It's crazy.
I think that is the thing now. It's like you get to a certain point, I feel, where you're hunting for things like that that have an interesting story
Mhm.
or, they're like weird. We
Yeah.
put this record for NutriBullet, which I still
Cool.
haven't found it, but since it's been out for a minute, I can talk about it. But it was like literally their blender sounds. I mean, this thing is like iconic. It's amazing. It has like a smoothie label on one side and a blade label on the other.
Yes.
And like I think it went to some influencers, I guess, but like honestly, that's the kind of thing that like I want to find. Just the
Yeah.
most weird random stuff at
Yeah.
this point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I do have like it's like an infomercial for a guitar amp from the 60s or something, or like for something. And yeah, it's just like one of those like promotional advertising weird where everybody talks like this, like that kind of a record. Like That's kind of what I want. It's just like history of recorded sound stuff is kind of where my collectorship is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't. What's your grill,
I mean, I think it's
Gary?
yeah, actually, I would love to know what Gary's is.
Yeah,
He's got a great record collection. One of the most awesome people. So, yeah.
yeah, Gary, get at us. Let us know what your grill is. I would love to know that. Oh, okay. Number two from Nasario 2391. When was the first time that you listened to Black Sabbath?
You want to go first?
I mean, you're probably going to be upset with my answer.
You're like, I actually don't like him. uh,
I mean, I know that I wasn't a teenager. I probably was in my late 20s, early 30s, I imagine.
mhm.
Um, I think I had, let's see, we did Monsters of Rock with Ozzy in 2008. I don't want to say it was then, but maybe.
Were you into like hard rock in high school, or were you more into like punk, or like what kind of stuff were you listening to?
I think yeah, I was kind of all over the place because I had my mom's record collection.
Mhm.
So it was a lot of like Beatles, Rolling Stones, Zeppelin,
Yeah.
obviously Fleetwood Mac, and Nine Inch Nails. I had the Pretty Hate Machine in 1994
Yeah. It's a good one.
when I was 13.
That's when I first heard Black Sabbath, was when I was like around that age,
Hmm.
goth kid, and I was really into like hard rock, Nine Inch Nails. You know, it started the same, like Led Zeppelin, but
Yeah.
then I think like when you're kind of in that world, it's inevitable.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, the obsession, I think that started a little later. And then
Yeah.
the record specific obsession started probably almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah. I
think a
mean,
lot
it's
of,
kind of an evolution a little bit.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, because even though I collected records, I wasn't as crazy about all the variants right away. Like I think that was something that was a rabbit hole that was discovered later.
Oh, yeah. When you found out that you could get more of them from other countries, and you're like, oh, hang on, wait a minute.
Why are these all different?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean that's the cool thing about like that record specifically is that there's like a bunch of different, you know, jackets and labels and whatever. But on the flip side, or on the B side, I guess, looking at doing the same thing with like rumors, they're all the same. Like they all kind of look the same. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
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 So I was like, oh, maybe it's got a different label. Like slightly, but not really. I think it was just because it was such a massive record that it was just like, get it out there, whatever. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
so
That's
I'll still have to consider where and what to figure out multiple country variants of something for. You know, like I feel like I'm almost at that part of my collection where I'm just like, I need something to inspire me to want to buy another record because I just have so many that I'm just like, eh.
I'm going back and still buying a lot from the CD era.
Hmm.
So a lot of that stuff that's getting reissued from the 90s is what I'm kind of looking at now. And it's hard to get some of that stuff. I mean, it'll come out
Yeah.
immediately, be sold out because probably everybody else is doing it too.
Yeah. Well, and I mean they don't know how many to make too. So I think they underestimate like their run number too.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, we just did 1,025 minutes. Maybe we should do a reissue. But as we know, then they have to get somebody else to cut it and plate it again and figure out if they're going to do a wacky color or something too. So
Yep.
then it gets delayed. But yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, geez. Mags. Oh, geez. Can you say that one? I feel bad when I
Axion,
mispronounce
I
them.
guess.
Maxion? Yeah.
Um,
Uh, any autobiography of a musician that you would buy immediately if they had one?
I
Has
mean,
Ozzy made an autobiography yet?
yes. And I honestly that's the kind of books I love to read. So
Hmm.
I buy and read pretty much all of them. I just for Christmas got one called Cured, on the Cure. So
That's weird.
yeah, I mean, I have tons. So any and all, bring it on.
Hmm.
Love
Yeah.
it.
I just got the Kim Gordon um
Yeah, I want to read that.
biography. And I also get Kim Deal too. Yeah, I think I have two Kims on my shelf right now that I have to read. But I'm finding it very difficult to read these days. It's like 2 pages and I drop the book on my face and I'm like, okay, well,
No,
that's enough.
I'm trying to honestly schedule my free time, which sounds insane, but like,
No, it doesn't. Knowing what I know of you, no, it doesn't. That is very on brand. And I'm glad that you're doing it so that you actually get some. My God.
I'm like, maybe I can fit 30 minutes to read here.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like that. I've really tried to do it like at the last part of the night so I can kind of try and wind down and be like, no, put the phone away, put the laptop away. No more working. Stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so at my greatest heavy rock vinyl wants to
Uh-huh.
know what year was the best for great rock albums.
77.
Yeah, I think
Hands
seven
down.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1977. Yeah. That's when everything changed.
Yeah. And then I would say the 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
Hmm. But unfortunately, that's when the rise of the CD started to happen. So then you have to have the format discussion at the same time.
True. True.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to industry insights. Johnny's Vinyl said, "Do you see more issues with color as opposed to black vinyl?" Yes, hands down. Yes.
uh,
Um, Other than clear for me, especially, but I mean also from the plant perspective.
yeah, I mean, I think from the plant perspective, it's like plant to plant, QC to QC. I mean, some colors just don't want to work as well.
Yellow.
Like, yeah, I mean, it depends, honestly. And I don't think your normal collector will know. If people are making good records and QCing them before they go out the door, you really shouldn't be able to tell any difference.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, yellow and white, like from my limited experience in QC, was probably the hardest to see any kind of imperfections like non-fill and like stitching and stuff. But I mean, if you're not playing your first offs or your hourly checks at max pitch at 45 RPM, I think you're probably going to be able to pick up on any kind of issue that's happening.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
That's the thing. Yeah. It's all about quality in QC. Like,
mhm,
really,
mhm.
you know,
Yep.
the press ops will dial in a machine and keep fighting it until they make the best record.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
We have an anonymous one.
Oh,
How has the industry changed since the resurgence? It's been a roller coaster.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people got in thinking that it was a way to make money. And a lot of those people are finding out the hard way that it's not.
Yeah.
Um, but even, people were expanding capacity. Um, Now they've had to shrink capacity, sell machines off. Um, I mean, if you look at the actual resurgence, like, I mean, that's kind of the question is like, where do you point to as the actual, like, the peak of the resurgence? Is that like,
And that's
because I mean,
back to
the
your point
pandemic.
today. Yeah. Like to your point
Yeah,
yesterday, I think a lot of people think that the resurgence is like just suddenly happening.
yeah,
But vinyl came back when Record Store Day came back.
yeah.
And
07, 08.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and so like that was a growth period, but I think that that was a more controlled growth period. And then to your point, the pandemic is when everything went haywire.
Yeah. And that was its own like little kind of, I don't know, capsule of madness
Mhm.
because that's when you had everybody shut in their houses, refalling in love with their music collections, or just buying turntables and, getting as many records as they could all at the same time. Meanwhile, all of the pressing plants had to try and stay staffed while everything was shut down, because we all had that kind of conversation as to whether we were essential. And I mean, if you look at sales and stuff, then yes. I mean, for mental health, absolutely. But fighting for PVC globally, when PVC and PETG are the two major plastics that are used for biomedical things, and now like every other shipping thing that we're doing in addition, increased demand on cardboard and paper and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a wonder that, we actually got things out, truly.
And that's, we've talked about it before. I would say like check some of our old episodes, but especially that year in review with Billy Fields that we did, because I think it really explains. A lot of people still to this day will be like, oh, now that Adele isn't clogging up the pipeline and Taylor Swift, and I'm just like, that's not it.
No.
So, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, I feel like people that weren't very established before the pandemic, as far as plants go, are going to have a little bit of a harder time because it's not an easy thing to do.
No,
that's for sure.
No, I mean, and even like on the lathe side of things, people are always, especially now with the economy,
Yeah.
People are really obsessed with that like economy of scale situation. And you're only going to get that with a pressing plant. You're not going to get it with lathe cuts because we have to do them one by one in real time. I mean, some cutters will do them, with two because they have two lathes. And that's fine and good. But like, still, it's only two records at a time. It's not one record every 22 to 28 seconds. So now with the continued and I'm going to say it, financial abuse of musicians by streaming services and the rise of AI in those streaming services by labels, most of these artists don't have that kind of capital to be able to do a lot of physical product.
Yeah.
So my side of the business has really decreased. I mean, it's still there and I'm still doing records and I'm still, blessed and highly favored with the projects that I get to do. And I love all the people that, choose me to do their records. But I mean, I'm one of the most economical in North America and I still get price matched with pressing plants, and oh, your per unit is too high. And I'm like, well, what do you want it to be? Because, plastic still costs money and, it's all that kind of thing. So, quantities have changed and all that kind of stuff. So I think you can look at every single portion of the business and see like an arc in how it's changed since records started getting hot in 2007, 2008.
Yeah. And I think that goes perfectly into the next question, which was about common misconceptions in the industry. I feel like everybody that isn't in it thinks that, and I'll preface this by saying that we are very lucky and it is an awesome job and it's very cool. But I think that that's what people think, is that we all sit around and get to just listen to records all day. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's very hard work. There's a lot of hard timelines, just like any other product that you're trying to get out, except that you're dealing with like how it sounds. Is it cut right? Is it, is the quality good? Are people going to complain about it? How's the packaging? Like there's so many things that it's still a job. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that comes across my desk that I'd love to check out, but I couldn't possibly listen to everything.
No. And I mean, and other than having to listen to every single record that is on my lathe one by one in real time, like sometimes that's the only new music that I'm going to listen to for the week because I'm like, I'm tapped out. Like,
yeah, you come home sometimes and you're just like, I need a minute. Like
I need quiet, and that's enough, especially when I'm doing like those like drone ambient records that are just noise, and I'm just like, it's stressful because you think that your machine is just like getting fried, and at a point you have to just be like, Jesus, take the wheel, whatever, we're doing it and it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's so true. I mean, even when I took the QC job at the pressing plant, like I thought it was going to be something that it totally wasn't.
Mhm.
And then having the like, I don't know, the misconception of my job at Lacquer Channel in addition. So the people that were at the pressing plant had a misunderstanding of what my job was at Lacquer Channel too. So even within the industry, there's misunderstandings of what we all do. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's I mean the press ops I think have one of the hardest jobs on the planet
Yeah.
because they have to be heavy duty mechanics. They have to understand fluid dynamics and it's a high pressure situation literally and figuratively. Um and they're not listening to music. Period.
I mean,
They're
it's
not.
same thing over and over. They're looking at, for large runs, they're looking at that record for days in some
Yeah.
cases. So,
Sometimes weeks. Yeah, absolutely. And to expect them to have, you know, the mental acuity sometimes on the 10th day of that record is, you know, that's that's a feat in itself to make sure that it's that the labels haven't changed, that the font is right, that there's no spelling mistake, because that is all part of that QC team. That's press ops and QC and print guys and girls and thems and theys and all the people that are involved in all of those little parts. You know, making sure that the stampers are correct even.
hmm. Oh yeah.
And if you break one, then what happens? And
Yeah. And I mean, even just like boilers, chillers,
mhm, totally.
all of this stuff is like, heating and cooling cycles. It's a harder job, I think, than people think it
Yeah.
is. So,
Understanding weather and how weather is impacting your plant too.
mhm.
I mean, I was just in Texas in a snowstorm, which is hilarious for a Canadian.
We
But
have
then,
weather here.
yeah, but I mean, watching people just like drive around with no lights on in a snowstorm, I was like, you guys,
They do not know what to do. It's
no,
I'm
no.
from the East Coast, like living down here, they are baffled. Yeah.
Yeah. And with good reason. I mean, like I said, like opposite wise, like if I was coming from Texas and I came to Canada and I was like expected to drive in a snowstorm, I probably wouldn't know what to do either. But
Yeah.
yeah, but but we were talking about rolling like blackouts that are going to happen there this week because of that. So I mean, I don't. Is there a pressing plant in Dallas?
Hand drawn.
Oh yeah, hand in Dallas. So I wonder. I mean, I wonder what Dustin would say about their power situation and how that weather impacted their last week.
Mhm.
Because yeah, like everything was shut down.
Yeah.
Like they closed schools and transit and everything. And I was like, dudes, do you have an inch of snow?
Well, and
It's actually
also,
raining.
and to your point, like they don't understand, they're not used to it, right? So it's like
Yeah,
dripping faucets. They don't know to do.
totally.
So like pipes burst. So
Yep,
there's all kinds of things like that too that are
totally.
happening.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what is the biggest challenge facing the industry, and how do we see sustainability playing a role in vinyl production?
Biggest challenge, I guess I would say economy, like global economy.
Mhm.
Um, and then availability of materials.
Yeah, and sustainability, I think, is part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just again, predatory practices by streaming.
Hmm.
Artists aren't getting paid for money, so or getting paid for their work.
Hmm.
So I mean, if we eventually only have AI music, I would say that's the biggest crisis is like musicians. If we don't have musicians, we don't have music.
Yeah.
We don't have anything to make records out of other than the 90s catalogs that we're going to keep killing.
Right.
But that's all we're going to have because they're not going to be able to have their jobs as creators, as like actual musician creators.
Yeah. I think too, something we talked about before was that, with this sort of boom post pandemic, is people investing in what's considered sexy, which is the pressing plant.
Mhm.
You get to make the pretty thing, the pretty product, and not investing in electroplating and cutting and the innovation around that, which
Yep.
is something like we are trying to really push for. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I mean, I think that that's still an issue. I mean, lacquer, there's still only MDC making lacquers,
MTC.
and like
And that's it.
that's it. And the innovation around sustainable records, it's not there yet.
Yeah.
Like the ocean plastic, awful. Um,
Yeah.
the well, we talked to the green vinyl guys, and there's the
Mhm.
injection molding, but there's still electroplating, so
Yep.
parts of that process still need to be fixed.
Yeah. I mean, there from the Making Vinyl conference last year, there was some innovation with electroplating, which was like um, the the sputter method, where they were coating it in a different way, and the way that the coating went on to the actual stamper used like 1/100th of the amount of chemicals, or 1/1000th of the amount of chemicals. So there's like, fits and starts of those little things, but there's also going to be a collective loss of knowledge in our fields too, especially with cutting records and maintaining lathes and making those those things work, because those still haven't been really updated. I mean, there's the stiletto lathe that's probably the newest one on the market. There's one in Australia, and then one in, oh, forgive me, my friends. I'm trying to remember where you are, but I think you're in Nashville. Yes, there's one in Nashville too. Sorry, Ray. Um, and I think those are the two newest lathes on the market, and yeah, I think there's only like one or two in North America, period.
Yeah.
So like that part is, still lacking.
Yeah.
Um,
And on the sustainability front, I think it's like, we have bioplastics, which is like considering, like if you were to change your car over to fryer oil,
yeah,
a similar process there with biovinyl, but it's expensive. And I think the US is still very far behind regulations that Europe and the UK have. Um,
well, and unfortunately, now that you've had a change in administration coming down the pipe,
yeah.
that that's absolutely going to take a back seat yet again,
Hmm.
because you have to have somebody that is, you know, mindful of the global environment as well,
Climate change.
and believes in climate change, which, I mean, as we're seeing our friends in California literally light on fire and lose everything.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
there's there's lots of problems with the industry, and sometimes it's just like, that's why I'm like, oh, I'm just like happy to do, a handful to make sure that you're getting what you need and it's all good. And I use recyclable things, and I feel pretty good about that. I mean, maybe that's the way forward
Mm.
too, is just moving to some sort of a one-to-one kind of method to be able to decrease the amount of waste that we use.
Well, and that's a good point. I think a lot of it is on the consumer, to
Mhm.
be honest. I mean, consumers think that lathe cut records aren't as good, or consumers think that regrind isn't as good, or
When
you
it is, and it
right.
is.
And
Yeah.
that's a big problem, is that or they don't want to pay for, the eco jacket or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
those kinds of things where it's like, if you truly want to do it, then you have to, you know, literally put
Yep.
your mouth is.
Yeah,
So
you have to buy in the whole way.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's just so many of the opinionated, loud talkers out there that just say like, this is the way and this is the only way, and oh my god, it's got to be 180 grams, or it's got to be this, or it's got to be that. And I mean, they just don't have any space for anybody else. And if you don't know, then you're going to listen to it and be like, oh, okay, well, why would they lie? Why would they say that's something that's not right? but they don't want to hear it from people like us, people that look like us and have our gender and
Mhm.
things like that, that challenge the way that they have approached their own collections and listening environments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then D. Aristar says, "Do you or you employ or your employees listen to what you produce?" Well, I don't have any employees. Um, R.I.P. Parker.
Oh.
He was the only employee that I had. He was my 12-year-old black lab, and he died last year, so he doesn't get to listen to any more records now. Um, but I definitely force my boyfriend to listen to the records that I make to make sure that I am not just believing in my own brilliance all of the time. I'm like, does this sound good? Like, does this actually sound good? Do you hear that? Oh my God. Did you hear that? Does it sound like this? Are you getting this like sound? And he's like, can you calm down? No, it's fine. So we trotted around two different turntables in our house to make sure that I'm not losing my actual mind. Um, but I listen to a lot of records that come out of Jen's plant.
Yeah. I mean, I
So,
think if it seems like something that I would be into,
hmm,
yeah, I listen to it. I've
yeah.
been lucky enough to do some fun drag records
Hell
this
yeah.
year, so those are fun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We love those. Yeah.
and employees, yeah, I think people listen to, QC might hear something that they think's cool, tell other people, and then they listen to it. Hopefully they're quality checking anyway. So,
Mm-hmm.
same person, how many records per day with the specification of 8 hours of work can be can be produced on your equipment? Well, for me, if you think like 30-second cycle times, you can probably get a little under 1,000 per
Is that
machine.
with? I was gonna say, is that one machine or two?
Yeah, I mean like 900 something, I guess, per machine, but then like you have to factor in waste. So you might get 800, let's say, on a great day.
Yeah,
But maybe 500 are passable or
yeah,
whatever. So,
yeah.
yeah. What about, I mean, for you, it's probably the length of the record.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, that's why I prefer to do 7-inch records because I actually feel like I'm doing more work. Um, I can do about again depending on side length. Um, I can usually do about 37s fully assembled in like a 6-hour day because of the ear strain.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to give my ears a little bit of a break, not only from the vacuum noise, because that is oppressive and never stops, and then the music as well. So, because otherwise, if you are listening with fatigued ears, then you're not going to pick up subtle distortions and things like that in the records that you're making. So you're just making scrap. So why would you do that? Yeah. Yeah.
This next one is from Raylan J. First, why?
Hell yeah, Ray. Mastering extraordinaire at Infrasonic in Nashville. Sweet little baby angel. Love her so much. I'm not the coolest human being. I'm not. Um, I
uh,
could say that right back to you. She says, "Why is Robin the coolest human being?" And I say that like I'm not just blowing myself up. And she wants to know about mono and stereo lathe cuts. So that kind of goes to the machine. Um, Mono is kind of the older vintage equipment, like from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the Prestos, the Reco cuts, and it's more embossing rather than cutting. So they emboss with a tungsten um, needle rather than a diamond or a sapphire or a ruby that we cut records and lacquers with. Um, it also just has like one channel that it has audio from. So, as we all know and love, mono records from the 60s have the same information on all parts of the tape. So, you're just getting all of that just mainlined down all of the speakers. And it's just glorious. But then the Beatles had to go and figure out how to record in 4 and 8 channel and come up with these stereo recordings. So now we have two different channels that we're trying to put everything in. And so that's where mastering is important for making records because of the information in both of those channels and what it actually does to the groove and what that subsequently does to your ears as well. Um, so yeah, I mean, I can cut in mono if I just master it that way. And sometimes I have to if things aren't cutting properly because you get lift outs and all of those wonderful cutting things. Yeah, that I mean that's the quick and dirty way to do it. I think to explain it. Do you have any
No,
insight on that, Jen? No.
that's yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely not the coolest, especially not the coolest in this room.
Wow.
Um, you're right up there along with me, kiddo. So, and we love you, Ray. Thanks for your work.
Yeah. At Sean XT, what's the work process with local independent musicians in creating their physical records?
Well, I'll let you start with that one because yours is a little bit more involved.
Yeah. Um, I think it depends. So if someone is what we affectionately call an 001, who is putting out their first record, then it is a lot of advising, a lot of coaching, a lot of teaching the process. Because if you're taught the process, if you go directly to a pressing plant, you'll have a customer service rep who can really work with you through that process.
I'm not a broker.
Yeah. Yeah, because you want to know where your records are made and you want to, support your local pressing plant too. And um, if you know the person who you're working with, then you can ask all the questions and they'll guide you and make sure you're getting the best cost effective but coolest package for you and your listeners. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is quoting, a lot of it is emailing. I think that it is cool when you are working with someone local and they can come pick up. I think that's always exciting for that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's fun to meet those people too. So,
It's cool to put people's music in their hands.
yeah, absolutely.
Ultimately, like that's the best feeling ever because they're like, "Oh my God, it's real now." It's not just like this thing that this random file that I uploaded into some server somewhere,
And I think that's
which was
something that you will probably be able to speak to too, is that like with that education component is like understanding that maybe your whole musical opus doesn't need to be put on a single record and you can
Mhm.
eliminate some tracks or edit yourself.
Mhm.
Um, People don't understand that that one groove physically has to only contain a certain amount of material. So like you
Yeah.
cannot fit crazy amounts of music. Um, and so that I think is part of that process. Or someone will see cool packaging. I think that's another thing. They'll see like some crazy like quad gatefold or like
Yeah.
cool
Totally.
cut something. And then you're like, well, for 200 units, that's going to run you $25 a jacket. And
Totally.
so, like, if you have a pressing plant customer service person that you can work with, then they can guide you to get something that will still be cool, but within a reasonable price.
Yeah. Well, and then like on my side, because a lot of those like locals and independent musicians, I mean, even labels too. I don't just deal with, self-represented human beings, but there's just like a, misunder- a misunderstanding also when it comes to mastering and having things ready for cutting and having appropriate side lengths or the way that the side is laid out so that you have your most dynamic track at the beginning of the side and your least dynamic, most tender love song at the end of this side so that, your your grooves aren't getting so smashed together that you're getting just unwanted distortion everywhere or you're having to just compromise on the overall level of the side. So then you have the conversation of why isn't my record as loud as my digital master? And then you go, those two things aren't the same.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they never will sound the same.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time that you're ever hearing it in physical, and that's what it's going to sound like because that's what it sounds like.
Yep.
So there's all of that conversation too. But then just even getting down into art and like having templates and, going back and forth with like CMYK and resolution and just the parameters that you need to make a good print. And then, yeah, like, oh yeah, well, I want a gatefold. And I'm like, well, you're dealing with 20 units, my friend. Like, you're not going to get a gatefold.
Yeah.
You're not. Like, they just won't even entertain that conversation. So it's like managing expectations right out the gate. And then there's always the price question. And then they shoot for the moon with their asks right out the gate. And then you have to pare it down. And then you have to pare it down again. And then it goes away for 3 weeks. And then it comes back. And then you pare it down again. And you change it again. And it's just kind of having that understanding that you're making a physical product and we all want it to be the best that it is. But they're not cheap.
Yeah.
In any way that you do them. They're just not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're trying to make a lot of money off of your physical product, like it's not going to happen. And on the back side of that, like being someone who counsels and mentors some of these independents, I'm like, I'm sure you're brilliant, but is this your first record? Yes. Then you don't want 100 copies. I guarantee you, you do not want 100 copies because you are going to be looking at your abject failure in your basement for the next 5 years of your life. And next year, when you make another record, you're going to want to make records out of that too. And then you're going to be like, oh, well, now I need to make another record. Now you're going to have 200 units of this one as well as 100 units of the one before. And then you're going to wind up with what? Still over 150 copies that you haven't been able to sell. So your return on investment is $0 because you've had to pay for every single record that you have picked up from the pressing plant, regardless of what its per unit is. Your return on investment is $0 if you don't sell them all.
Yeah.
And when you have to start discounting them because you've got a second record out, then what happens? So, I mean, that's a question back to you, Miss Vice President. Will the change in economy start to affect the number of units that pressing plants have as their minimums?
I think it depends on the pressing plant and their customer base. I think when it comes down to it, the reason why, for example, we don't go lower than 200 units is just because when you factor in the cutting and the plating and the print, which print normally has a minimum of 500 units. So even if you're doing 200 units, we're probably still having to charge or buy 500 pieces, which we can then store or hold, for a repress. But when you add all of that in, the cost to do that, if you're only doing 100 records, makes your cost per unit so high that it doesn't really make sense anymore. And so that's why a lot of times if people want less than that, we always refer them to lathe cutting, we send to Robyn because it's like, it makes more sense if you want that many to do a lathe cut, just financially. So I think if it's a pressing plant that's working with a lot of indies, I think, that 200 range makes sense where you can still get, $12 to $15 per unit and make something on top of it.
Yeah. If you sell them all.
Yeah.
And that I mean, it's probably a different conversation like on either side of the border too, because with the sheer number of people that live in America and the number of opportunities for bands and artists to play, you have the ability to potentially do 100 records and sell them in 6 months because you've played 100 shows.
Yeah.
But in Canada, especially, you don't have that opportunity to play. We have 36 million people across our country. The major cities are at least 8 to 13 hours apart.
Yeah, much more
so. Yeah. So if you're touring, and then again, like, yeah, if you're touring, are you bringing 5 boxes of vinyl with you, or are you bringing a drum kit? Like, those are the other questions too. Sometimes it is easier to do CDs, and it's totally fine. You can do that.
And I think the frustrating thing working with some labels is they just go to cheapest, So it's like they may go to a GZ company, or and a company like that, an independent small business like Gold Rush or Furnace or Gotta Groove or any of the Cascade, like those are all independently owned
Yep.
And so we can't compete with people who are getting print from overseas and
Yeah.
it's cheap.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
so I really think, again, it's like support quality, support local, support people that are those small businesses.
Hmm.
Because they're the ones that are keeping everything going. I mean, really,
Yeah. Yeah.
let
Especially in your town.
yeah, like
Yeah.
let
Yeah.
easy, big, massive, or like United or Memphis or some of those plants that have like hundreds of machines, let
Yeah.
them do those large runs.
Yeah.
And then like if you're pressing 1,000 to 5,000 or less, even
Hmm.
use a smaller pressing plant. It's a big job for us in a good way.
Yeah.
We can get it done quickly for you. It might be a little more expensive, but it's going to be good quality.
Yep.
And we don't ever put majors ahead of
Independence.
and I think
Yeah.
that's a complete misconception too.
Absolutely. And I mean, the other side of that too is how many actual artists are employed at places like pressing plants.
Totally.
So, I mean, you're reinforcing the community and the scene right there
Yeah.
as you're, getting your records placed. It might be your friend Steve that plays bass in that band that your band always plays with.
Mhm.
He's making your records. I mean, and what a great story.
Yeah.
That rules.
Yeah.
So, so yeah. Okay. From D Aristar again. This one I don't know. How long does it take to make a vinyl flow plate?
Maybe they mean just like a stamper.
Stamper?
How long does it work in time or quality? I'm guessing a stamper.
Yeah.
So this is something I think that, Robin and I want to cover when in another episode. We did a vinyl 101 as our second episode ever.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you go to our website, we have a start here button, and I highly recommend listening to that. But um, we'll do a video component at some point to really
Yeah.
share those things better. But terminology is really important, and you don't know what you don't know, but
Yep.
that helps in communication through and correct information. So I think what we're talking about is a stamper, which um, I was just explaining the whole thing to someone the other day, and I was like, here's our infographic because
Or is
it
it a lacquer?
maybe so your
We we can talk about both. Talk about the stamper though.
so your lacquer's cut first, then it
Yeah.
goes into electroplating where it's sprayed with silver, goes into a chemical bath where it grows a father/stamper onto it. If it's a one step, that first plate gets used in your machine as your stamper. If it's a two-step plate, then the other side of it is your mother, which then can make more stampers. And if it's three-step, then you save that first stamper, you make another stamper from the mother, and then that goes to the pressing plant. So it's very confusing. That is the like quick and dirty of how
Yeah.
that works.
And
But
usually stampers will last between 500 and 1,000
yep.
stamps. Yep.
Mhm. But
Depending.
they are considered consumables. So like you
Yep.
could put on machine, it could break.
Yep.
If you're working with
And
a
they do.
plant, they'll replace it if they broke it. So
Yep. It'll
yeah,
get broken. It can get scratched just like a regular record, even though it's made out of metal.
yeah.
Um, if you're asking about lacquer, which is the master, uh, it works until it's plated and then it is destroyed in that process. So um, that's it. If unless you're getting a dub plate,
Yep.
which
There's
they
less-
do. I mean, sometimes they still do for people, but now that all of us lathe cutters are around, usually are foregoing the dub plate for a plastic version so that it lasts longer. Um, if you were to play a lacquer or a dub plate, you would get maybe 100 plays out of it, but every single time you play it, it's going to degrade in quality and longevity. So yeah, I mean, let us know what which answer was right,
yeah.
which answered your question, I guess. And then we can expound farther if we need to. I do have a box of stampers and lacquers and everything to do story time with when
Yes.
we delve into that. So that's all good. Our next question is from Glesclo. G Lesclo. I'm not sure. Why do some brand new vinyl records sound distorted when I play them?
You want to take that one?
Because they are distorting. I mean, it can be a myriad of things.
Mhm.
It can be your playback equipment,
Yep.
which it usually is.
Yes.
It can be a pressing issue, which it usually is not. It can be a cutting issue, which sometimes it is. Um, I mean, sometimes that record was not cut by a human being, that was cut by a machine. So they're not going to know the difference because they don't care because they're robots.
And sometimes
Um,
the plant or band, or not the plant, sorry, the band or label will say, you know what, time is more important than a
yep,
recut.
just do it.
Because if we get all the way to test pressings
Mhm.
before somebody notices that there was a distortion in the master or the cut, then we have to go back to that cut and start over. So going back to the question about time, it usually takes about a week in cutting, 2 weeks in plating, and then a week or two at the pressing plant to get pressed, QC'd, and shipped to you for a test pressing.
Yeah.
So if you consider about 5 weeks for a test pressing, let's say some people might be faster or slower, then a band or label might be like, my release show is more important. It's fine. I can live with it.
Hmm.
So, but I agree. I feel like it's probably playback.
Yep. Sometimes, I mean, majority of the time, I find that it's playback, but um, yeah,
Just depends. Yeah.
I mean, it can be just like bad mastering. It can be like a bad recording
Hmm.
too. Like it can be an issue at every single one of those steps, but generally it's not a pressing plant issue
Yeah.
if it's distortion. And I mean, that's one of the things that always kind of drove me crazy at working at the record store because people would be like, "Oh, well, it sounds terrible." And I'm like, "Oh, wow. Let me just put it on this trusty Tech 12 here and we'll see how it sounds." And I mean, like the record store playback system was nothing revolutionary.
Mm.
No, no, no. But I mean, it did the job for sure.
Yeah.
And it was I mean, it was incredible to show just the how different playback systems can illuminate different parts of the record. But that's why. Maybe just need to change your cartridge, my friend. That might be it. Yeah.
Some
Trends.
future. Ooh. Um, at Chords Records. Um, Shout out. They have a YouTube channel. We'll check it out.
Yeah.
Why aren't there more Gen X vinyl community channels?
I don't know. Maybe because we're too busy working.
True.
Also.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, if this was our job, like, cool.
Hmm.
But editing videos, a lot. It's a lot of work, as I'm sure
Yeah.
Chords Records knows from their
Yeah.
YouTube.
Totally. And I mean, if you want to help make it Jen's full job, go to the Patreon. Thanks. That would be great. Um, and and then that would be just fine.
We are doing some surveys around the newer generation, though.
Mhm.
And so maybe we'll share some of that in a future episode.
Yeah. We like to know what you guys are all up to. All of you, theys and thems and he's and she's and NBs, all of you. You're welcome and celebrated here.
Yes.
Um, yeah, we want to know about your record collections and why you have a YouTube or why you don't have a YouTube.
And what we should do on TikTok because that's lost on us.
Well, I mean, it depends on if you're allowed to have TikTok very soon, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess that's true. Hey,
Yeah.
maybe we were ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Our last question is from that Eddie Hex. What has you excited for all things vinyl in 2025?
Continued employment is cool.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Honestly, with the way that a lot of things are shaking out, um, being able to do this job, I'm happy to do it. I'm excited for
Mhm.
it. I think there's going to be some cool releases coming up. Um,
Yeah, I've
that
got the
aren't.
70th anniversary of Godzilla coming. So that's cool. Yeah.
I'm excited to be
Um,
speaking in Japan. That'll be cool.
yeah. Yeah. All things vinyl in Japan will be very cool.
And Women in Vinyl will be doing some cool things. Check out our favorite things resource on our website.
Yeah.
It's a very time consuming page to put together.
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
um, and we will probably be continuing with some more info sessions with a different twist this year. We have a whole new board of amazing humans.
Totally. Yeah.
So very excited for what they have to bring. Yeah. And the podcast, I mean, we're here. We're excited to be more connected with everybody here and expanding our podcast because there are vinyl podcasts popping up everywhere, but we are industry.
Not going to talk about that.
Nope.
Nope.
But we work in this field and we're a safe space to ask questions, even silly ones. So,
Love silly questions. Oh my God, give me a silly question. I love a
you
silly
know,
question.
I think, I don't know. I guess it's because maybe we are women in vinyl that people think they can't listen if they're a man. I don't know. I know that all of you guys that are listening know that that's silly, but I don't know.
Yeah, we welcome you here.
Everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're just the gals telling you the facts.
Yeah. Because she's a boss and I'm a boss. And so we don't have to worry about anybody getting above us and saying that we're wrong or that we shouldn't say things like that on the internet.
Yeah.
Head wag. 2025. I mean, yeah, I think what we're doing, I think this year is the most exciting part for me.
Yeah.
Um, while we just kind of disregard all of the imitators and keep forging the path that you started back in the day. And we've got some interesting ways that we're going to enrich and continue to engage with the community that will be coming up pretty soon. So keep your peepers peeped because that'll be cool. Um, yeah, just trying to be the change.
Yep.
Yeah, or continuing to be the change, I guess.
Yeah. Over here in our little corner.
Yeah, or live from a airport near you, as might be next weekend.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody for sending in your questions. Really appreciate all of your thoughtful prompts.
Mhm.
But we want to know in the comments down below, because now that's a thing.
Yeah.
We want to know what you think. What makes you excited about 2025? Is there some record that you are on pre-sale for that you were just like, when is it gonna ship? Where? When am I gonna get it? Where? Because we just had a postal strike here in Canada, so
All that. Yeah.
we'll be getting all kinds of packages hopefully soon, which is great. Um, yeah, what would you like? What would you like to see on the tubes now from these delightful millennials that are your new best friends? Like, subscribe, do all
Yes.
the things. Join the Patreon, patreon.com women in vinyl to get the newsletter and all of the things
Yes.
to be first 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 knowing on all of the exploits of your two besties
Exclusive
in the
merch.
vinyl space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we
Oh, baby.
to
No bunnies, no bears. We promise.
and as we continue to do some of the things that Robin mentioned to come, Patreon will be the best place to link in to some of those things. So
Yeah, and if you want to get involved, that's the best place to start.
yep.
Tell us about your favorite record store.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about your grail. Gary. Gary,
Yeah.
what's your grail?
Tell us what you want to hear. We love it.
Yeah, and we need it because we're floundering as millennials on YouTube. Just like, here's the thing. Ta-da. But yes, we love and appreciate all of you. Thanks for welcoming us into the tubes. We're happy to be here. And we appreciate you watching our little faces.
Yeah. See you next
Or listening us to in your ears. I don't know where you're doing it. Maybe you're doing it at the same time. God, that'd be a lot. That'd be so much. But yeah, till next time. Episode 57. What?
Crazy.
All right. Thanks to the board. Thanks to everybody that helps us out. Thanks to Ray for being an awesome editor and making me sound like I know what I'm doing.
See you next time. Like and subscribe. Bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode has been brought to you by Women in Vinyl and Red Spade Records. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe, and you can always contact us directly by visiting www.womeninvinyl.com.